Good afternoon, welcome. It's amazing to see so many of you joining us today. My name is Sultan. I'm a PhD candidate at the Delft University of Technology. I'll be your host today in this webinar together with my colleague Çetin de Wolf. We have an exciting topic to explore as we dive into the role that digital product passports play in enabling circular economy implementation. We'll ask what, why, and how questions. We planned an interactive and fun session where you will hear from the pioneers and interact with them in breakout rooms after the panel discussion. Before getting started, I would like to give the floor to Çetin as she will tell a few words about the DiCE Lab.
Thank you, Sultan. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. So a little bit about the DiCE Lab. Sultan and I, we work together as academic researchers on digital innovation that can help transition from a linear take, make, waste model to a circular one where we really make sure our resources are used wisely and to keep them from becoming waste. And to do so, we discussed extensively with practitioners and policymakers on how to make this urgent transition happen. And we realized that all stakeholders across industries needed to be brought together to combine digital technologies with circular principles to tackle one of the greatest challenges society faces today. And so that's why we created the DiCE Lab, the Digital Circular Economy Lab. And it's meant to be a knowledge hub connecting research with practice. And so we started with these monthly webinars from companies who inspire us and researchers who inspire us. And we also have PhD candidates Deepika Raghu from ETH Zurich and Batallé Garcia from TU Delft, who are part of the organizing team. I'm also very happy to say that we're really supported by several scholars and initiatives. And to name a few, Professor Nancy Bocken from Maastricht University, Professor Vincent Gruis from TU Delft, Dr. Meliha Honic from TU Wien and ETH Zurich, Professor David Peck from TU Delft, Jan Konietzko from Cognizant and Maastricht University, and also the Circular Built Environment Hub of TU Delft. So our initiative is supported by Vlaanderen Circulair and Vlaams Agentschap Innoveren and Ondernemen, VLAIO, and by Interreg NWE CHARM Project. So thank you very much, Sultan, for initiating this initiative, and I would like to welcome our speakers as well.
Yeah, thank you for this brief introduction. So we have three speakers who have been at the forefront of initiating, designing, and implementing the first examples of material passports and platforms. Our first speaker is Pablo van den Bos. He is the co-founder and director of Madaster platform. Madaster is one of the pioneers in the built environment, automating the creation of web-based digital passports for buildings and construction objects. Our second speaker is Meliha Honic. She is a postdoctoral researcher at the Vienna University of Technology. She has been publishing numerous papers on BIM-based material passports for new and existing buildings. Finally, we'll be hearing from Stefan Sipka about the European policies about digital product passports. Stefan is a policy analyst at the European Policy Center and co-authored several informative reports on digitalization of the circular economy. I'm really curious now how Pablo understands or Madaster defines and realizes material passports. Pablo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sultan, for your introduction and managing these almost 70 people into working with the Miro board. And also thank you, Catherine, for the intro and hosting this interesting initiative. I really like the DiCE Lab initiative. For the people that already indicated that they are an expert on circular economy and they know everything about material passports, that's cool. But I'm going a bit back to the beginning. Why are we doing this? How and what do we actually do with passports? And I'd like to end up to say briefly something about what we are doing with Madaster. If you expect that you get the whole story about Madaster right now, I'm sorry, going back to the roots first. I think that's an important start of this lab. So why material passports? First of all, because we want to survive. And you think, okay, are we going to die? Yes, in the end, everybody's going to die, but we have a couple of crises on our planet. We have created that together. We have a climate crisis. We're using too much energy, therefore our planet is warming up rapidly. We need to do something about it. Another thing is we have a waste crisis or a waste issue. This picture of this pile of waste is increasing more and more rapidly. It's not only plastic in our oceans, it's waste everywhere that we create with our current economic system. And we have a resource issue. We are using resources of this planet in a much more rapid speed than our planet can handle. We don't have an unlimited amount of resources, as our planet is a closed system. So we got to do with everything that we have. So when we create a lot of waste, that's the wrong direction. So we want to survive. We need to do something. Next slide. And that means that we need to act. The good thing is we want to act. People say, okay, if there's an issue, let's get it solved. Let's go to IKEA, look at the manual. What do we need to do in order to solve the crisis? People want to change as well. Right? They want to solve the crisis. But it's not only about acting and doing something. We as human beings, we also would like to compete. We'd like to be just a bit better than the rest. We'd like to win. We want to become smarter, better, richer, more successful, more influential than others. So that's why we are doing this. That's why we have embraced the concept of material passports as well. So then the next question is, okay, if we are doing something, how are we doing that? How do we initiate? Yes. No, Sultan, the next slide. Yep. First of all, we get started. And you see here a picture of something that the kids in the Netherlands are doing every summertime. And when school's off, they go out in the field and start to create all sorts of objects. As you can see in this picture, it's cozy, it's nice, it's sunny, it's good. We like to get started. So with material passports, we saw a lot of initiatives to create pilots, initiatives to create new business models, initiatives to do all sorts of research. What do we need to change? What is it? And not a bit, I mean everywhere. If you open up the web, look at some newsletters that are distributed, everybody is working on circularity, and the concept of passports is seen everywhere. So we all got started. Another thing is that we encountered pretty rapidly that it's about technology. Technology facilitates us into making a change. That's the good thing about technology. We can use additional power, additional resources to come up with solutions to solve the crisis. So it's about technology. And then finally, we love guidelines. We'd like to understand within what boundaries do we need to change in order to create those or to solve those crises. What are regulations? What is the norm or the standard with respect to a passport? The request for guidelines is very clear. Lots of people say as well, we need regulation. Is it the local regulation? Is it the country that needs to come up with laws? Or is it maybe the European Union or European Commission that should say, how do we create passports? Because we love to have guidelines, because when there are guidelines, you know what to do. And obviously, if you know the rules, you can also try to win and benefit from it. So we want to do a lot of things. Yeah, now it's very good, because the third question is then, okay, so what? What are we going to do? What can we expect from material passports? And the first aspect is, in the past couple of years, it has been turned out very clearly that it's all about transparency, and not just a bit of transparency, it's about transparency in the details. We want to know exactly what is the impact of a particular product or a particular building or even a particular material on our environment. So what is the impact on water? What is the impact on the air? The impact on soil? How much carbon is generated in the production process or in the transportation process. We want to know it not in generic figures. No, we want to know it in detail. And luckily, technology can help us in that. So transparency is key. And the next slide. We also know that it's not only about having transparency in an isolated manner, because that's useless. It is about transparency with connected functionality. We want to make sure that this transparency can be shared with others, that if you as a regulator want to know something, that you can look it up. If the additional detailed information is required, that you can click through towards a further database or solution or functional proposition that is there available. So it's not about isolated passports. What I've said before is when I create a red book with my picture and my name, it's useless. It's not about the booklet itself, it's about the connected system behind it that makes it possible to travel across borders. That is with the material passports as well. It's about connected functionality. And then the final one, it is about governance. We are talking about a complex set of data, of transparency with various owners. So what to do with all this data and this connectivity? Should we follow the big tech firms that have created a phenomenal business model where they become the most wealthy and maybe even most powerful companies in the world? Or should we ensure that there's a proper governance on top of this new set of functionality that we are going to create? A governance where we take care of the overall value for our society instead of the value for an individual player, where we use this data and all this functionality to solve the crisis that we've created, instead of using the data to benefit on a very small scale for just one person or one company. So it's about governance as well. So what have we done with Madastar then? And that's my final solution, or my final slide on Madastar, just to give you an idea. We have created an online register, an online data platform where you can store the information about the objects that you have. So it can be a bridge or a road or a building. And you can store all sorts of information on that platform based on Excel or preferably based on the 3D BIM models, building information models. Based on the information stored, we can create passports, material passports, product passports, building passports, bridge passports. We can do that for areas or even cross-national portfolios. So if you have an investment portfolio in various countries, we can create a passport for your portfolio too. We give a financial valuation. So we give you what is the value of the materials that you have available in your objects. And we give you all sorts of valuations with respect to the environmental impact, both circularity, so how easy is it to disconnect things, but also the impact on carbon, the embodied carbon calculator, or the impact on air, water, and soil. That is what we automatically do. We do that in a couple of countries. We're active now in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Norway, in Germany and Switzerland. And we are aiming to roll out further, at least in Europe, but we also have projects outside of Europe that we do facilitate. So that is what we do with Madastar, and hopefully this is a first start of this lab with a background of the why, how, and the what. Thank you, and back to you again, Sultan.
Thank you so much, Pablo. You gave such a nice background information about the passports, and I'm so happy to hear that you're expanding in Europe and already in several countries. We created a board for you, so if you would like to connect with Pablo, you can see the links. Also, you can put your questions on this board. We won't have Q&A session, but we will have breakout rooms, and our friends will help you. You can already use chat box as well. Also here, you'll get around 15 to 20 minutes with Pablo in the breakout session after the panel discussion. For now, we are moving to our second speaker, Meliha Honic. Meliha, you can take the floor and start your presentation.
Thank you, Sultan, for your introduction, and also Catherine, thank you for your introduction, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be part of DiCE Lab and be presenting today. So my research is mainly about BIM-based material passports for buildings. This is what I will present today. It is mainly based on my dissertation and also my time as a postdoctoral researcher at TU Wien. Yes. So why am I dealing with this topic and why is it so important? Pablo already made an introduction. So what I would like to underline and what I would like to add is that we have a large stock of materials within our cities. So we have a lot of materials within the cities, but we don't know where and what kind of materials they are. So, for example, we don't know, is it copper, what is in a building, is it concrete, what is the amount of it, and what is the quality. And also, the construction sector is the main consumer of raw materials. So somehow we need to keep the materials within the cities and within buildings in a loop, such that we can enable a circular economy. So what I've been doing throughout my PhD thesis and throughout the time as a pre-doc assistant at TU Wien is that I've created BIM-based material passports. And shortly to explain what is BIM, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, which is not a tool for visualization. It can also be used for visualization, but it's more a 3D representation of a building where you have also information regarding, for example, the number of windows within a building, the exact materials within walls, and so on. And we've been using BIM to create a material passport because it's a great knowledge source where you can also make changes in early design stages. For example, you can make variant studies within BIM easily and assess the material passport and create a material passport. And what does the material passport show? It shows the exact material composition of a building and also the recycling potential, also and the environmental impact of buildings. So how does this material passport look like? This has been designed, like on the left side, you see one part of the material passport. It's just one thing out of it, showing the recycling potential of a building. This is very similar to the energy certificate. This has been done on purpose such that people feel familiar with it. So here you see, for example, a building with a recycling potential of 2.5. This means that somehow 50% of these materials are recyclable and 50% are waste. This is just one example. On the right side, you see a BIM model of a building. And you also see in colors, for example, you see the exterior walls, which are green. So this is the recycling grade of the buildings. This is reflecting like the left side with the right side exactly. So for example, you have the slab, which is yellow. So the recycling potential is lower than from the exterior walls. So this can be presented in the BIM model. It's more than only this, but I can only show some parts of the research. And for new buildings, it is a bit easier to make a material passport because there you know what you plan to have in a building. So during the design stage, you can make variant studies. For example, you can make a building out of timber and assess the recycling potential, or you can make a building out of concrete and also assess the recycling potential. And then you go for one option, for the better one. But for existing buildings, we have a bigger problem because we have no detailed documentation of existing buildings. So we need technologies to explore the materials, to investigate the materials within buildings. And this is just one way how we did this. So this is one of the most exciting parts of this project. So we've been working with an institution which is using ground penetrating radar. It's a device which is usually used for archaeological investigations. And this was the first time that it has been used for detecting materials within existing buildings. So for example, in walls or slabs. So you go with this device on a wall, for example, and then you measure some parameters. So I will not go too much into detail because it's very technical, but you measure the frequency and the energy, for example, of the wave that is coming back from this wall. And what we can detect very good so far are metals. So, for example, on the right side, you see the radar image. So this is the outcome of applying this ground penetrating radar on a wall. When you have, for example, a construction with metal and insulation in between, this is a plasterboard wall here in this case, you can easily detect this because the metal profile reflects the waves very good because of its high density. And through the insulation, this wave penetrates through, but through the metal profile, it cannot penetrate through. So you get this picture like a wave. And this is really easily identified as the plasterboard wall here. Yeah, so we are still working on this technology. We will also use machine learning, so we are already using it, but there are some materials for which this technology can be used very good. For some, it's more difficult. And what will be our further steps? So all this information that we are gathering now from existing buildings, we are creating a BIM model out of it, and then, of course, a BIM-based material passport. And this information of the BIM-based material passport should be embedded in a digital urban mining platform for Vienna. So we are working very close with the city of Vienna to also get the information on what the city needs, what kind of information we should embed in this material passport, because it's a different thing to have it for a new building and it's different to have it for an existing building. How we can assess also the qualities of the materials and what exactly should be in there. So how should this platform be used? It will be a publicly available platform where everybody will have access to it. And information will be, for example, like in 2 years, we will have 10 windows in the second district of Vienna, and this can be used for a new construction, for example. Yeah, this is just one of the further steps. That was all from my side. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's amazing and very inspiring, especially the further steps. Are you going to build the entire city with the passport? Is that what I am understanding?
Yeah, but that's very difficult to do it for all. So we will choose some building typologies of Vienna regarding the age and the specific building typology. We can do upscaling on city level for these specific building types, but not for all of them. But this is like a work in progress.
Okay, yeah. Great. Thank you very much for your inspiring presentation. And for Meliha as well, we created a board, so you can connect with her through email, also LinkedIn profile, and she has published many good articles. You can reach her articles on ResearchGate. You can use this link. So we will have more time with you in the breakout group. So I'm afraid we have to skip Q&A session for now, and I'll see you in the panel discussion. Now we turn to Stefan Sipka. I am really curious about the European policy on digitalization and also passports. Stefan, could you take the floor and update us on the current developments?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sultan, and happy to be part of this discussion. Yes, when it comes to my slides, I focused on the digital product passports, and a couple of questions we discussed previously would be of particular importance. But indeed, I would just like to provide maybe a short background so as to my work. So my name is Stefan Sipka. I'm a policy analyst at the European Policy Center. So it's a Brussels-based, independent, non-for-profit think tank. We cover a number of topics of relevance to the EU policy making, and the focus of my work is circular economy. And in the last couple of years, we have been looking into these linkages between digitalization and circular economy, and published a number of papers on the matter. And as part of this work, what we found very interesting are these links between circular economy in digitalization, and digital product passports can play a major role as and there are, say, a prospective solution that can serve as an enabler for the green transition, but also support our economy and society. Also, just when it comes to the policy aspects, just to say that this topic is in a way addressed within this so-called twin green and digital transition. The twin transition is introduced in the European Green Deal. And this is an overarching strategy, or let's say a policy framework introduced with the new Commission. And for the first time, we have such an overarching strategy, which is, well, it was intended to be a sort of an umbrella strategy that all other strategies and plans should be underneath it, and should be guiding EU's, let's say, development in the coming decades. And one of these, let's say, aspects that are important to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal, including climate neutrality, resource efficiency, protecting our natural capital, and so forth, is the twin transition. So this is something that's that is basically, the idea is to link the green and digital agendas. And just to say that basically we can think of it in two ways. One is to use digital as an enabler for circular economy. Another aspect is also to think about the negative side effects of digitalization. And I would say both are relevant for digital product passports. But here, just to highlight how digital product passports can actually serve as enablers. So basically, to achieve a circular economy, you need to share information across value chains between different stakeholders involved. This is simply important because circular economy is very complex. You need to look at different stages of the life cycle, from production to end of life phase, and you need to have this information flowing, which is very difficult to do. And the whole point of digital, in a way, and digital passports is to make this information transfer more efficient. And producers then can obtain valuable data about their products if they retrieve them afterwards. Consumers can use them to make more sustainable purchases, to know what to do with the product, to repair it, and so forth. Repairers, waste operators will know what to do with these products based on information they can access via digital product passports, and public authorities can also use it to enforce for law enforcement and so forth. But yeah, one important challenge, as I mentioned, is also are the side effects, such as consumption of energy, and also potentially like an additional source of e-waste. But here I wanted to highlight that a major challenge is actually data protection concerns to make these digital product passports more scalable. There are big opportunities, but there are also major challenges in this sense. And now basically what the EU is trying to do is to create a sort of a common framework for the introduction and scaling up of digital product passports. So this is recognized as a very important issue at the EU level. And this in a way goes back to what Pablo was saying. We do have important progress is being made in the private sector by companies themselves and in different, let's say, business sectors. But the thing is that the argument to go for this kind of a policy and governance framework is simply because, yeah, we talk about commons here that need to be protected. So our environment, climate, limited natural resources, and so forth. But also what's important is to avoid fragmentation. If every member state starts to intervene, that can actually create different rules that can impair the single market, right? So it's better to do it at the EU level. And also it's the question of competition. Just purely economical sense, if you have data, knowledge is power, right? And information and data is part of the whole story. You need to create certain standards in terms of data sharing that can ensure that there is a competition, that there won't be that one actor won't try to dominate the markets on its own. And this is when it comes to information transfer in general, but it also relates to digital product passports. And basically, what the EU is trying to do now is to introduce these kind of rules on digital product passports. And basically, when we talk about regulatory instruments, we talk about mandatory requirements on product passports and establishing these different standards on data and data governance standards. And this is basically interesting initiatives to keep in mind are these common data spaces that are being developed currently by the EU. Think about this as a sort of a architecture. It's not a legislation, it's not an app, it's like a set of rules, standards, and agreements to actually use data in a certain way that can support digital product passports, right? But then there will be more specific rules on digital product passports in specific legislation. What is interesting to look at is this upcoming Sustainable Products Initiative by the EU that will be launched on end of March, most probably. And basically, there will be some overarching rules on digital product passports, which will be specified in the coming years for typical different product categories and so forth. What is also interesting to look at is a proposed batteries regulation, because this batteries regulation, which is to be adopted, already contains certain rules to introduce product passports for large batteries for vehicles, industry, and so forth. And this is to be rolled out in the coming years. On top of these regulatory aspects, which I'm happy to discuss further, there are financial instruments that can be used by the EU. There are also green public procurement can be used as a tool, and there are also soft law, which can be linked to regulatory mandatory instruments, guidelines, and mandatory standards. And the idea so far is, from our discussions with the Commission, is that they want really to build on what the industry is already doing and not necessarily, over-regulate things. But my understanding is that they want to work together with different stakeholders, so the rules don't have to be mandatory necessarily. But yeah, there are things happening, but there is more to come. And what is important to consider is that simply this is we need a very sophisticated approach, because value chains are different, products are different. So what product passports will be introduced? Really, just think about construction sector, built environment, and textiles, for example. That this is a huge difference how these different sectors operate. For example, there are examples of where information transfer is more effective in the automotive sector than, for example, in electronics, because it's a different role of data, and it's the nature of the supply chain is different. But electronics is more complex than, for example, automotive sector, where a couple of companies can establish these rules more effectively, for example. So it's important to consider that there is no one solution that fits all. You need to actually work on a case-by-case basis and then find concrete solutions on the information to be shared, how will it be shared, and to make this transition happen. So yeah, in a nutshell, it's about that, and happy to discuss further.
Thank you very much for your insights from the policy perspective. And I'm really curious about your discussion on the panel. So please add your questions for Stefan on the board, and you can connect with him with the links that I share. It is now time for the panel discussion, and I'll leave the floor to Çetin.
Thank you, Sultan, and thank you to all the speakers today. This was very interesting, and I'm really curious to know a bit what your thoughts are. And you touched a little bit on that in your presentations, but what are your thoughts on the future of digital product passports? I mean, you mentioned also on different scales, on the city scale in Vienna, for example, or more on the national scale with Madaster being implemented in different countries, or on the EU scale with Stefan's presentation. So what is the future for digital product passports?
Maybe I can start. I have a few points regarding the future of digital passports or material passports. I think that they have to be implemented, but that they can be implemented, they need to be mandatory documentation. Like this needs to come from the European Union, I would say, from the policymakers, that this document has to be mandatory, or at least somehow we need to show what will be the recycling potential of the building that we are planning. So I think there is already many things are going into this direction, that specific recycling or reuse rate needs to be proven when you plan a building. So I think this is a good way to go. Also, what is needed, I think, to communicate with the cities, with the municipalities of the cities, with the stakeholders, who would need what kind of data, and who could provide us with this data, for example, to implement it into the digital passport. And also further steps, of course, technology-based further steps. So what technologies could we explore to generate a digital passport, for example, for existing buildings? And also to update BIM models. This is also one thing. So who will do the update of this information on the materials within a building throughout the whole life cycle? Because a building is not just being created and that's it. 100 years and 200 years of time that need to be somehow also adapted in the BIM model or then in the material passport.
Right, so I hear there's some governance aspects that need to be made mandatory, and also some technological aspects that need to be developed. I think, Pablo, you also mentioned governance in your presentation. Huh?
Yeah, governance is definitely very important, but governance is also, you can also have private governance within a company. So how is a company managed? But I think it's looking at the future of material passports, building passports, product passports, I think the direction is inevitable. We are moving, we are progressing with the application of technology. We all need further transparency because we are aware of our own health, our own living environment. So we as the public, we as a society demand more transparency and insights. I think some key questions around the passport is, should we further develop a passport as a reporting tool, because regulatory bodies want to be informed about who does what? So is it a reporting tool? Is it our passports tools for regulators to create policies, that they are being informed about what's going on and how should we organize our society? Or are passports further developing as tools for the society as a total, or the market, in order to become innovative and to get benefits from it? And I think one of the big risks is that the concept of passports are being embraced by authorities or governmental bodies to make it mandatory for reporting, to create a bureaucratic way of getting or sharing more data, or that it's being used to come up with policies and and regulations that limit the market because we try to avoid the bad things. And that the market as such, which can be which is a combination of public and private organizations, and the market is hindered through those powers that try to minimize innovation and maximize control. And that is one of the things where I think that all governmental or regulatory bodies should be aware of. Mm-hmm. Passports can be very beneficial for companies to get a better grip on their own material flow, to get a better grip on their efficiency process. And a lot of entrepreneurs would like to do good as well. Do not hinder that process with coming up with bureaucratic measurements. So that is my view, and also an advice towards how to treat passports.
Right, yeah, thank you. I like the idea of saying governments is not just the government, but it's also just your company, and you should take ownership also of how to do better, how to do good, and not how to do less bad.
Look at a lot of companies that are reporting, and especially the global ones. They have the means to do so. But look at what Larry Fink is doing. one of the president of BlackRock. We can tell a lot of bad things about BlackRock or Larry Fink, but what he is doing, he is asking all the companies where he invests in to come up with a policy to do better. So the market is not bad and public sector is good. It's a mixture, and we should understand that and leave space to do good by all.
Yes, and digital product passports can be a really good tool to do so. Stefan, you mentioned actually more also the policy side as well, and the sustainable product initiatives and so on. What are your thoughts on this?
I think we will be seeing more of let's say, policy also, more work on digital product passports, both in the private and the public sector. And I would totally agree that in a way that policy interventions can create problems and provide solutions. Depends on how definitely how you approach them. And I think the idea, at least what we should be aiming for, is to create a sort of an enabling framework. So for example, if you create common standards for data sharing and for product passports, the idea is shouldn't be to bureaucratize the process and to create just another reporting requirement for companies. Indeed, there are quite a lot of reporting requirements at this point already, but basically to enable information to flow. And sometimes common standards, just think about single market for products. We have similar product standards. It enables products to go across the union without having to check at the border each time whether product complies with a certain quality criteria and so forth. So if you create this kind of, depends on how you approach it, it can be an enabling framework for our economy and support environment, or it can create new obstacles for sure. There are quite a lot of interesting initiatives in private sectors to build on. And yeah, I would say, I mean, it's not necessarily have to always introduce mandatory rules. You can introduce them, or you can introduce them in discussion with different stakeholders, including industry. Sometimes you can just include non-mandatory standards where you see that they will be followed if there are these kind of standards to agree upon to begin with. There are also global standards that I think it's looking beyond the EU. We need to think about global standards because the supply chains are transnational, and there are some interesting developments like GS1 is working on this, and I think the Commission is collaborating with this initiative at the global level to create some standards. But yeah, there will be more about this at the EU level, and we will see what will come up in March as part of the Sustainable Products Initiative. Great.
Well, thank you very much, all three of you, to respond to my question. And this is the end of the very short panel discussion. Thank you so much for your presentation.